breaking news. Mr. Audie Merchant of the Purdue rowing team just attended practice this morning and found his prized oar missing. 4 suspects have been identified. The boathouse was also vandalized with red paint. A white powder was found at the scene, a shoe polish, as gravel samples, plastics, and a note left on the ground. And now we'll go to Angela, Mel, and Ann, who have information from the following tests. The gas chromatography test was used to determine the sample of the shoe polish. The density and flame test helped identify the gravel samples left at the scene. A white substance was also found at the scene, and an analysis of the white substance left behind at the scene, an FTIR of a piece of plastic that was also left at the scene, an absorbance data from the color of the paint left on the boathouse, paper chromatography to help identify the use of pen that was left on the note outside the boathouse, and also photo evidence from the scene.
Brenda is Mr. Merchant's neighbor and works at Eli Lilly and Company. She was vague when asked about her whereabouts today, but after running several tests, she has been identified as a primary suspect. After performing gas chromatography of the shoe polish, Brenda's shoe polish was a match to the crime scene. As you can tell, it's very similar. This is the crime scene. This is Brenda's. As you can tell, the peaks are very close together, and they're quite similar. So she has been the primary suspect in this test. Each test had 3 main peaks, and the retention time for the crime scene was 0.5, 0.2, and 0.25 minutes. And the retention time for Brenda's were 0.2, 0.15, and 0.2 minutes. So she was the most closely matched suspect. Evidence from the FTIR also pointed to Brenda, as the plastic sample from her also matched the one at the crime scene. This is the background, and this is the crime scene, and this is Brenda. As you can tell, her peaks are very similar to the crime scene at the plastic at the boathouse. And also in this area, they're very closely similar. The peaks were both broad in the crime scene and in Brenda, and the functional groups are both OH. Okay, an absorbance spectroscopy of the red paint found at the crime scene was also ran against Brenda's paint from her garage, and they were very similar. The absorbance values from the crime scene decreased, and at 480 nanometers, the paint type from Brenda was the same as the crime scene at 2. So the police suspect that she is the one that vandalized the boathouse.
Ellen's a fellow crew member of Mr. Merchant. She was drinking coffee when asked to be spoke to. She stated to be in studying all day. She gave them her shoe polish bottle, but claimed to have no paint. They did find red spray paint in her garage, but she claims it's not hers. A black pin and plastic from her desk were taken to be tested. Evidence from only one test of Ellen's was positive. The coffee creamer found at the crime scene matched Ellen's creamer from her coffee. The evidence did not lead to any primary suspects. This is Ellen's, or the coffee creamer, and this is the crime scene. These both match each other.
Also, with the substance analysis, we concluded that it was the coffee creamer by going through a series of tests. When the coffee creamer was added with water, just like the white substance from the scene, nothing happened. When vinegar was added, it kind of separated and clumped, just like the one from the crime scene. Also, when FeCl3 was added, it was kind of beaded away and changed color, also like the white substance from the crime scene that changed to an orangey color. Also, when the iodine was added, it kind of clumped and beaded off, and that's exactly what happened with the white substance, and thus it helped conclude that the coffee creamer was the same substance found at the crime scene.
Laura has many classes with Mr. Merchant, and she's also a friend of his. She, however, wishes to be more than that, but Mr. Merchant is dating one of her close friends. When we talked with her, she was very fidgety, supposedly due to a headache. She told us that on the night of the crime, she was down at IU visiting an old friend. When we searched her house, we found red paint left over from painting her car. Also on her desk, we found a pen and a bottle of shoe polish. There was also a piece of plastic on the ground that was taken for evidence. All of these objects were taken in for testing. These are the results from the paper chromatography tests from the crime scene. For the paper chromatography test, we concluded that Laura was the closest to the crime scene sample, showing that in water, Laura's moved, just like in the crime scenes. Hers moved 3.5 centimeters, and it was the closest one to the crime scene, which moved 2.5. And Laura's did not move in methanol like the crime scene one too. So therefore, Laura was the one closest to the crime scene.
Nicole is also a chemistry student teacher and applied for the job at Westside, but Mr. Merchant previously had clinched the job. So now she's a student teacher at Harrison. She was friendly when asked about the crime, but also acted nervous. When we asked her where she was on May 7th, she said that she was out celebrating on her last day of student teaching with some friends. She claimed to never use shoe polish, but a bottle was found in her closet. She also had a can of red paint that she claimed that she was using for an art project. A pen and piece of plastic were taken to the lab for further testing. For the several samples of gravel that we've collected at the scene, first we took the mass of the gravel samples. Then we calculated the volume by placing it in water. By having the mass and volume, we calculated the density. Because the densities were so close together, we had to do a flame test that would help differentiate the differences between the samples. Nicole's flame turned out blue, and the boathouse flame was green. These are the only two that were similar, and therefore we concluded that Nicole was guilty of this crime by evidence of the density and flame tests. Tests have been concluded, we have led to this conclusion. Laura with 1 guilty, Brenda with 3, Nicole with 2, and Ellen with 1. As you can see, we think that Brenda should be guilty of the crime of stealing Mr. Merchant's oar.